Ladies, I hope that you are enjoying today as much as I am. I think our morning has just been awesome. Blown away by Kelly and, of course, Dove kicking us off with that good song. And that just leads us up to another really fabulous lady, speaker, representative of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I love this lady. Camille Schrier is a graduate of Virginia Tech with 2 majors in science. She is currently a doctoral student at VCU. She has helped me with programs for the past 3 years. She came here when she was Miss Virginia and spoke with our Kids Tech students. And 3 weeks ago now, she spoke to our 6th grade girls in Buchanan County for our STEM conference. And last week, she spoke with our high school juniors in Buchanan County, our virtual visit to Virginia Tech. A lady that is just totally awesome on so many grounds. I'm going to not share any more of her secrets, but Miss Virginia 2019, Miss America 20 plus, because she's still Miss America, the longest reigning Miss America ever. And she's one of our very own. I think she's from Southwest Virginia, but she says she's not. Camille.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm the only thing standing between you and lunch. So it's quite a position to be in. And the fun fact is I'm actually not the longest reigning. Actually, there was a Miss America in 1922, Mary Catherine Campbell. She won again in 1923, so I didn't even have to win twice. I mean, like, I wouldn't have won twice, so I'm kind of glad. But I'm Camille. I'm grateful to be back at the Virginia Tech Southwest Center here at the Higher Education Center in Abingdon. I was here as Miss Virginia before any of this craziness in my life, I guess mid-craziness, but like before the rest of it really started to happen, which was me then winning Miss America. And I want to take an opportunity to kind of go through that whole story with you, because whatever your assumptions are of me and maybe what my life is or has been might be different than what is the actual reality. I am only 25, I'll be 26 this year, but I've learned a lot, especially in the last probably 8 years of my life as I've gone through my higher education and especially my STEM education. And I'm excited to share that with you right now. So I'm Camille. Oh, I have to click it this way. Technology. Hold on. It's on. Ooh, okay, that works. So I, of course, am Camille. I grew up not in the state of Virginia. I grew up in Pennsylvania, in Bucks County. If you know the story about when Washington crossed the Delaware River to win our independence as a country, I lived there. Literally next to the Delaware River in a town called Washington's Crossing, Pennsylvania, named for literally that story. My parents owned a small business growing up. My mom was a nurse, and my dad used to be a diesel mechanic turned electrical contractor, and my parents owned a company together. And I grew up during the summer doing copies in the office and sleeping under desks. So that was fun. I loved playing sports. I did field hockey, swimming, track and field. I was a competitive equestrian, and I did all of the sports where I didn't have to throw balls. Any ball type sports that involved catching or throwing, I didn't do. I couldn't do those. I loved science. It was always something that I was interested in. That became a larger part of my story, but I never really fit in with any other kids my age. I was kind of like a lone wolf in a lot of ways. And I just kind of accepted that. My friends would always do things, and I always felt a little bit different than them. And that was just kind of my life. I was like, okay, this is just going to continue. But I guess when I was younger, I thought that that was more of a detriment than I did as I got older. And that actually tended to be a lot of what allowed me to be successful as an adult. And I didn't really recognize that. I also love all animals and nature. And if we can hit that next slide, you'll see more of that. So I loved like anything that I could touch that was alive. I used to, okay, so you guys are of the generation, you will understand what I'm talking about. When I talk to the elementary schoolers, they look at me like I'm crazy. I used to mail order, so like fill out the little postcard, send it in. I used to mail order caterpillars online, or not online, through the mail. And I used to order them to my house, and they would come and I would watch them turn into their little chrysalis. They would go up the cup, they would form their cocoon, and I would watch them turn into butterflies. And I had this butterfly grow kit that I would do every year. My aunt would give it to me every year. I was fascinated by it. I looked forward to it every single year. I would grow the butterflies. I'd release them into my yard. We had a butterfly bush. We had a garden. I would garden with my parents. I would fish. I used to find salamanders and turtles. I had turtles in my bedroom. Like, I loved all nature to a point that my parents were probably like, enough. I would capture toads and keep them in a fish tank and then get my parents to take me to the pet store to get crickets to feed them, to keep them alive. So I always joke that like my dad didn't have a little boy, so I was the little boy, but I was just always drawn to nature. And I used to say that I wanted to be a naturologist when I was about this age. That was my best way of representing that I wanted to study biology. And at 6 years old, I didn't know that I could study biology in college, but that was the best way that I could express that at that age. And so people often ask me when I started to realize I loved science, and it was through experiences like this. And that's not so rare for a young girl to want to be interested in these types of topics, but the people around me did a really great job of helping me understand that what I loved was STEM. Sorry, I'm clearly technically challenged. If we could advance to the next slide. Thank you. So there's another topic that I love too, and it's more than just cupcakes and pizza. But I loved baking with my mom more than anything as a young person. And so baking and cooking. So we'd often take our vegetables from our garden and we would do home canning. We would make zucchini breads. We would bake things. We'd make cupcakes. That was the fun thing that my mom and I would like to do. Well, if you're a really good baker, you're also a really good chemist, because cooking and baking are so rooted in chemistry and biology that was another opportunity as a young person that I started to recognize that I loved chemistry along with biology. And those things, I mean, if you think of like yeasted doughs, I was making yeasted breads at like 10 years old. My parents are like, you really want to make a yeasted bread? And I'm like, this is great. It grows. It's alive. And I'm like, yeast is alive? So as a kid, I was fascinated by that. And I'm still fascinated by yeasts. I just happen to learn about the pharmacological treatments to kill them oftentimes. But it's something that has been a constant in my life. And so the little girl that loved all of those things turned into the next slide, which was, sorry, this is, if I can turn this off, turn it back on. So I turned into that. So my parents, instead of pushing me into more feminine type summer camps, I wanted to go to science camps. I really had no interest in regular, just general sleepaway camp. I'm like, I want to go to the science camp and shoot off rockets. And I did. And so I turned into the mad scientist little girl who just really enjoyed all things STEM. But again, I kind of felt a little bit different from my friends. So a lot of my friends were interested in going to those traditional sleepaway camps and doing other things over the summer. Well, I wanted to do this, and then in my spare time, I worked in a barn, and I used to shovel the stalls just so I could ride for free. So those were the kind of things that I liked to do. And so from a young age, I always was interested in science, but kind of didn't always fit in. And a lot of the other girls my age weren't as interested in science as I was. And that was okay. I just learned to embrace it, and the people around me encouraged me instead of made me feel like I was weird. And I will say at this age, my mom asked me if I wanted to do a pageant, and I laughed at her and I was like, absolutely not. I would never put a dress on. And I would only really ever wear a dress to go to the dentist because I really liked my dentist. And so I would get dressed up for the dentist, but I wouldn't get dressed up for anything else. So let's click this. Okay, so then I turned into a really hardworking high school student. And I will say, even though I loved science, it was never something that came really easily to me. I was a high achiever, but that was because I worked my butt off to be. And I didn't often get teased throughout my educational process, except a few times in high school. So my last name is Schrier, and everyone would call me a try-hard. So they would call me the Schry-hard. And I'm like, okay, if you're gonna tease me about that, like that's fine, I'll take that, because I do work really hard and I tried to do everything I could to be successful in my academics and to get my teachers to want to write a really great recommendation for me when I went off to college. And that was really successful. And I would take all of the extra STEM courses that I could. I would take the honors classes. I would take the AP sciences. But they were not always easy. And I had to spend an enormous amount of time to be successful in those courses. And I remember I was, I'm not really introverted, I can be, but I'm always the one that I'll raise my hand and volunteer and answer quickly. And so I remember in my honors chemistry class in high school, I always would raise my hand and participate. I think that's one of the best ways that we can learn as students, is to participate and even get things wrong. Well, I raised my hand in chemistry and I said whatever answer, and my teacher, I got it right. My teacher looked at me and he was like, even a blind squirrel gets a nut sometimes. And now he follows me on LinkedIn, and so I hope that he realizes what I've gotten to do after his honors chemistry course. But that was one of those times where, when we think about potential opportunities for a student to decide, especially a female student, to go out of a STEM career, those moments where maybe I could have decided, you know what, that guy just made me feel really bad, and I don't really want to pursue this anymore because that was a really uncomfortable situation. I didn't care because I loved the science too much, and so I continued through. But the interesting part was, and I think I might have a next slide if you can advance to that, I was really focused on being the best rather than learning the information in a lot of ways. And that's difficult, especially for high school students right now and college students who were forced to be this superbly high achieving person on paper to get into these really competitive universities. And so I really wanted to look great on paper instead of really figuring out what I wanted. So I wanted all of my grades to be exceptional. I wanted to take all of the classes that were going to get me into the best school. I wanted to get the best ACT and SAT scores and get into the highest ranking universities that I could. And I was also focused on, what's going to make me the most money when I become an adult? So everyone around me was like, okay, you love science. How about you be an engineer? Because we need more women in engineering. Absolutely true. You like chemistry and biology, you could be a chemical engineer. And I'm like, that sounds great. Everyone's like, you know what? If you get a degree in chemical engineering, you're always going to have a job and you're going to make a ton of money, which is also true. But that wasn't the right reason to become a chemical engineer. You have to have the passion to back it up. And it's not like the only career that I could ever take that would make me any money would be getting a degree in chemical engineering and becoming a chemical engineer. That was not true either. But that sounded really impressive to say that I was going to be, a freshman in college majoring in chemical engineering. And so I was like, sure, absolutely. So I applied. Let's go to the next slide here. I applied to 12 engineering college. I got admitted to 11. There was actually, one college here in the state of Virginia that didn't accept me. It's that one with the blue and the orange. That's fine. It's their loss. I like Virginia Tech better anyway. So I actually got into one of my reach schools. And for those of you who have gone through the college application process, those are kind of the schools that you think you might be able to get into, but your chances are pretty low. And I got into one of those schools. Again, very highly ranked, right up my alley. And I went to a small private school in the state of New Jersey, and we had college counselors that worked with us individually. I'm thrilled. I get this admission. I call my college counselor. I say, I got into the University of And she goes, oh, they changed their mind. I'm like, they changed their mind? She's like, well, they only really take 2 students from our school every year. And they were going to pick somebody else. And so I'm so glad that they picked you. It was like wonderful. I'm so excited now. But it was academically the best school that I got into by rankings. And I was kind of between that university and this school in Virginia that had this turkey as a mascot. And I kept telling everyone in my New Jersey high school that I was in between these 2 colleges. And my teachers were like, where's the choice, Schrier? And kind of expecting for me to go to the more prestigious university, which is kind of the environment that I went to high school in and what I thrived on, which was that person saying the prestige, the prestige, the prestige. I went to that university. Yeah, I did. It was the worst decision I ever made. It was the worst decision I ever made. That's my freshman dorm room. Yeah, it was terrible. It was a toxic kind of university culture. And I think that it's kind of similar to a lot of work environments potentially. And I'll go into that more on the next slide. But it was not an environment that I could be successful in. It was the type of environment that felt like it was trying to push you out and see who could survive. And for me, I went to a small high school. I grew up with people around me that really supported me. And the way that I realized I succeed the best is when the people around me support me and encourage me. I do not do well in the environment where it's who's going to get to the finish line fastest? And, there's going to be all these bumps and a couple of you are going to fall through the cracks and tough luck, natural selection. We're going to move on with the people that made it the best. That discourages me and demotivates me. I needed a place where I felt like I could be celebrated and that I wasn't going to pay $60,000 a year to, maybe get pushed out of the university. That didn't feel good to me. And I was also that high school student that needed help. I said, those classes never came really easily to me. So now I'm going to walk into a university where my freshman chemistry class has 600 people and I'm overwhelmed and I need help from my professors. And there's 18 inches of snow outside and it's below 0 and I can't get to help. And then I remember even my second year, I put all of my office hours from my professors on my schedule and I would put them in my Google Calendar, and every office hour was overlapped by a class that I already had. So I knew at that point that I could not go to one office hour for any of my courses because I had classes during them. And I just remember looking at my computer and just crying and being I don't know how I'm going to be successful here because I can't even get the help that I need. And I know that, maybe I was at the bottom of the pack getting into this university. It was my reach school. They were going to pick somebody else. And then I got in here and now I feel like I'm just left to fail here. That was not a place where I was going to be successful. So I stayed a year and half of a semester. And after halfway through this first semester of my sophomore year, I left the university. I moved out. I moved home. And I went to community college for the rest of that half of a semester and then an additional semester. I learned more at that community college than I did in my first year at the larger university because I had the attention and the help and the time one-on-one with the professors that I needed. And the high school that I went to, if you had gone to community college out of high school, what are you even doing? And that really frustrated me because I didn't ever recognize the value of that type of small education, and especially the fact that I could have saved so much money and learned more and then potentially transferred to a larger university to finish my education. That had never been taught to me because I was so focused on the name and the rankings, and I completely overlooked the value of the education that I was getting and what I needed as a student. Because I wanted to do what looked good. And that was really stupid of me looking back. And I wish that someone could have come and shared that with me as a young person. So we're going to go to the next one. And this was kind of the issue that I had at that first university. There's this idea in our culture right now that's idolized overworking and exhaustion. And it was the you hustle 24/8, you never stop working, when you sleep, I grind kind of thing, where I needed a break. I actually have a genetic disorder where I have chronic fatigue from that. And so I get really exhausted really quickly. So I'm either doing my work or I'm sleeping. And everyone else was like, I'm in a sorority, I'm a full-time student, I'm in a research group, I'm the president of my sorority in 3 different clubs, and I party every night until 3 a.m. I don't know what your problem is. And I remember sitting in the hallway my freshman year and hearing these girls through their dorm room doors talk about me and be like, I don't know why she thinks this is so hard. Like, she's making such a big deal and being so dramatic about the fact that this is hard. Like, I just moved 12 hours away from home and I'm exhausted and I'm stressed out and I can't get the help I need. And you guys are going to make fun of me. So cool. So I don't like that kind of culture. I don't think that that's healthy for anybody. I think that it's important for us to stay balanced in our life and take care of ourselves, to stay grateful, and quite literally that sleep and rest are really critical to your mental and physical health and honestly to your academic success. And that sleep and rest shouldn't be considered laziness. We tend to do that in society, like, oh my gosh, like everyone's sleeping. When you sleep, I grind thing, which irritates me. You can take a break and it's okay to take care of yourself and your body. And that was something that I really now value in my life. And sometimes you just have to turn everything off, especially in this culture of having devices and email 24 hours a day that people feel like they can contact you all the time. You're allowed to turn it off. You're allowed to. And I had to learn that. So then I transferred to a really cool university. It's one of my favorites, really. Go Hokies. And now I like to think that I'm like the unofficial mascot of Virginia Tech. So I go around and now I try to convince everyone to go to Virginia Tech. But what I will say is, although I didn't go there originally out of high school, I'm almost kind of glad, because I don't think that I would have recognized what Virginia Tech could offer me until I went to a university that had none of the things that Virginia Tech could offer and didn't do anything for me as a student, that when Virginia Tech literally did everything I needed to be successful as a student. I'm not paid by Virginia Tech. I literally just love it so much. And so I graduated from there and I got 2 different degrees. I have 2 pieces of paper, which is wonderful because I ended up spending 5 years in college instead of 4 after the transfer. So I got a degree in something called systems biology. I'm quite literally the first person to ever get a degree in systems biology from Virginia Tech. And it is basically math and biology and data sciences combined. So I used math and computer science skills to learn how to solve large-scale biological problems. So if you think about drug development, if you think about bioinformatics in genes and understanding how certain genes and certain diseases coincide, that's what someone in systems biology knows how to do. And so that helped me a lot. I actually got to study a lot about my own genetic disorder, which is something that I'm particularly interested in. And then I got a degree that everyone knows what that is, which is biochemistry. Kind of goes along with the biology and chemistry I loved so much as a kid. And it's a wonderful way to kind of combine 2 very different topics, one that's very traditional in the STEM fields, and then one that's a little bit different. And it was a great way to set myself up for the next thing that I was going to do, which was go to pharmacy school. And I never thought I wanted to go to graduate school, but I got an opportunity to intern in a pharmaceutical company in college. And I worked under a pharmacist. I was like, pharmacists can work in a pharmaceutical company? I thought they just worked at Rite Aid. I was like, oh, well, there's a lot of opportunities for pharmacists now. You actually have to have a doctorate to be a pharmacist. So I went a few hours east to a school in Richmond called Virginia Commonwealth University. Go Rams. We like each other, Virginia Tech and VCU. They're a great little team there. And I started my first year of pharmacy school in 2018. And I learned so much about medications. My mom had been a nurse growing up, and so I knew a lot about medicines kind of going in. I was very aware of medicines and substances, but I learned so much more in my first year of school. But I had to kind of take a little bit of a break there. But one of the most interesting things that I think I've learned through my STEM education is that it's been a lot more than just STEM. I learned critical thinking. I learned problem-solving skills. I learned innovation and creativity. and how to explain really difficult topics and how to quickly understand really difficult topics. Even if you think about just understanding and reading a journal article, that type of a skill as a professional can be really, really important. It puts you ahead of a lot of your peers when you're in a work environment and you can digest and understand difficult topics very quickly. And that was one of the skills that I did learn kind of outside of those hard sciences. And that was something that really kind of helped propel me in those internships that I had, and hopefully when I get my actual career job as a big girl. So there's this whole other piece of my life that kind of happened during my first year of pharmacy school. And so, I said that little girl with the beakers and the hair didn't want to do a pageant. Changed a little bit when I got into high school. I had a friend that did a pageant and I was like, I think I want to do this now. And the first question that my mom asked, which was pertinent, which was, is there a swimsuit? And the answer to the question was no. And I got to learn as a high school student how to present myself, how to speak in front of a group, how to interview, how to sell myself to a person that I had never met, and how to convince them of the skills that I had at 16 or at 14 years old, how to dress professionally, how to present myself in a way that was professional. You can think what you want about pageants, but it's not like toddlers and tiaras anymore. And some of them are, but most of them aren't. And the things that I learned as a young woman were extremely helpful for me professionally and academically. And I enjoyed them. I got to do fun things. I got to ride in Christmas parades with my family. My dad would drive me in these parades. It was like a fun family activity. I learned a ton, felt more confident. And when I went to college, I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm retired. It's like, I'm never going to do this again, but I got out of it what I wanted to. But, when you do a pageant, there's this idea of like Miss America, right? Everyone you have a crown on your head and everyone says, are you Miss America? And like 98% of the time, the answer is no. But Miss America is that brand that we all know. It's been around for 100 years. And it's kind of like the Super Bowl, right? If you play football in high school, it's like, maybe I'll go to the Super Bowl one day. Well, maybe I'll be Miss America one day. Yeah, sure, Camille. But I saw this advertisement actually in the last slide on the bottom left of the screen. And it came up on my Facebook during pharmacy school during lunch one day. And it said, join us for the 2019 sweeps pageant. It was the last local competition leading up to Miss Virginia. So if you won, you got to go to Miss Virginia. And I was like, in one of those places in my life where I was like kind of like overworked, a little bit exhausted. And I like to cope with that by overwhelming myself with other things to distract me from what I'm being overwhelmed with at the current time. So I'm like, I'm going to do this. So I call my mom. I'm like, I think I'm going to compete in this pageant to go to Miss Virginia. And she's like, what? She's like, they have a talent competition. And I'm like, I'll figure it out. So the moral of the story is Miss America has been around for 100 years this year, started in 1921 as a bathing suit competition on the boardwalk of Atlantic City, New Jersey. That's our first Miss America, Margaret Gorman. She was crowned. The Golden Mermaid was her title at first. And the next year she became Miss America. And we're going to advance one. So Miss America's changed, in a huge way from the time it began. And that's kind of the cool part about it. So you see these pictures from on the right, that's 1921. That's what Miss America looked like at first. And then you see some diversity coming in that top photo. We had our first Black Miss America. It was actually Vanessa Williams in 1985. We've had our first Indian Miss America. We have women. Phyllis George is in the middle, if you know that name. She was a big NFL reporter. She was one of the first women's sports reporters. So we've kind of been paving the way. And then this is more recently in 2017, that image of, the more modern idea of Miss America. But it's interesting because I think that Miss America has constantly been adapting with women's culture throughout time. In 1921, that was when particularly white women in our country got the right to vote. So that was these were simultaneously happening. This was 100 years ago. Women were getting arrested for wearing bathing suits in public on beaches still. So the idea of going out on stage in a swimsuit was kind of radical. And this one woman got in trouble because she wore tights with her bathing suit instead of bloomers. And it caused an actual public uproar. And so this is the time period that we're working with. We see women's bodies all over media now. So it's not as weird now, but back then it was a big deal. So we had that. They added a talent competition in 1938. It became more of a show. Scholarships started to be awarded in 1945. You used to win furs and movie contracts before that, because that was what the big deal was. Kind of radical to give scholarships to women in 1945. There weren't a lot of women pursuing higher education at that point. So again, we're starting to bring, we're pushing the boundaries for women. We bring, so evening gowns, you started to be crowned in an evening gown in 1948. Prior to that, you were crowned in your swimsuit. So again, you're winning scholarships, being crowned in a swimsuit, kind of radical. We had our first Black Miss America in 1984. So she was crowned Miss America in 1985. Also in 1985 was the first year that they removed body measurements from the program book. Prior to that, your measurements were listed in the program book. It was part of the judging criteria. Seems a little wild to me now. In the 90s, we started to focus on social impact. And so each woman had a societal platform that they wanted to advocate for during their term. That came to a head in the 90s. And then most controversial, more recently, they removed swimsuit in 2018. A lot of people didn't like that change. I competed in the organization because they removed it. I have struggled with an eating disorder and a lot of mental health problems throughout my life. And I did not feel like I needed to put my body on display to win a scholarship. Totally fine if another woman wanted to. I think that there's plenty of ways to see women's bodies now. And I didn't really want to be on national television and having to put that pressure on myself to win a scholarship or an opportunity. And so I just chose not to compete until it was gone. So more power to the other women who have done it, but it just wasn't for me. So I did that. But there was a huge reason why I thought I could never be Miss America. And it had nothing to do with any of those things. It had to do with this other part that I briefly mentioned. We're going to head to the next one, talent. Yes. And this is not like America's Got Talent. So let's click through these for a second. We see women that sing at Miss America, dance, play instruments, twirl batons, or do puppet shows called ventriloquism. And I don't do any of those things, like literally none of them. And if I did any of them, everyone would probably leave. It's an interesting thing because this has been what Miss America has looked like for probably 30 to 40 years. Prior to that, women like packed suitcases on stage. And when I was at Miss America, BB Shop, who was Miss America 1948, came and told us the story about how her year, Miss Montana brought her horse and did a horse demonstration on stage, and her horse almost fell into the orchestra pit. That is why there are no live animals anymore allowed at Miss America. So prior to like the last 30, 40 years, there were many different talents that we saw. But more traditionally, this is what's seen as Miss America talent. Clearly, I don't do any of those things. Let's skip to the next one. So what do scientists do when they have problems? They innovate. You find yourself a creative solution to the problem that you're facing. So I wanted to compete in this pageant, in the middle of pharmacy school, but I'm like, what am I gonna do for a talent, man? So I solved this like a scientist with the scientific method. I said, okay, I'm observing. There's only 5 talents you ever see at Miss America. What are the rules? Question, can I do something else? Am I allowed to? Is it against the rules? Nope, only no live animals and no fire, I asked. Research, what can I do that's different, that's also authentic to myself? Because through that college process, part of my problem was that I let everybody else tell me what I should major in and what college I should go to, and that didn't really work out well for me. So I'm really focused on what should I do for myself, what represents me. Maybe I can do a science demonstration. That would be kind of cool, right? Hypothesize, kind of plan this out. I have to try it out. I ordered chemicals and beakers from Amazon. Mind you, I saw the advertisement 2 weeks before the actual competition, so I only had a limited amount of time. Brought it to that competition, experimented, collected my data, kind of went from there. So I like to say that I like to solve my problems with actual solutions. Oftentimes they are hydrogen peroxide and supersaturated potassium iodide, but they are solutions nonetheless. And this was the first time I ever did my science demonstration. This was at the competition I saw on Facebook. I had laryngitis. I sounded like a horse, but I sure went up there and I did my demonstration and I won. And I also won the talent award. And I was like shocked. Now there were like 8 people there, but I didn't care. I was like, I get to go to Miss Virginia and I won the talent award. So like, I feel like, you know, this whole me not having a talent has been validated by the fact that I did something different and I was successful. Super cool. But just because something works doesn't mean that you shouldn't, you know, keep improving. So like, that's the second time I did it, a little bit bigger. I used almost 200 times more volume of my actual solutions in this demonstration than in the first. But I will say, I got some heat from the science community, and reasonably so. I don't listen to a lot of internet trolls, but some of the internet trolls who were actually educated internet trolls didn't like that my hair was down and I had dangling earrings on. I don't disagree with them. So we fixed that when I went to Miss America. But so I won Miss Virginia, but I also won the talent award. Weird. A lot of people were upset. The traditionalists that liked that singing and dancing and instrumental type of a talent didn't really feel like this was a talent. And they have their right to their own opinion. I think that education and communication is a talent, and being able to entertain somebody for the 90 seconds that I had without any music in my background was a talent. They are allowed to have their opinion. The judges made their determination, and I got the award, which was super cool. Again, if I didn't even win at the end of the day, I was more excited by the fact that I got the talent award than really anything else. And then I went to Miss America, put my hair back, put my stud earrings on instead of my dangling earrings, and I did it again. And I even kept improving how I was talking about the demonstration. And I want to share with you what this really looked like at Miss America. For reference, I have 90 seconds to come out, do the demonstration, and explain it. So I go really fast. So I just want you to have that as a reference point. This is the preliminary competition at Miss America. This is the demonstration I did. You can watch it here. So, thank you. So that night, I won the preliminary talent award at Miss America. And so it was the third time that I had done this demonstration in a competition, and it was the third time that I had won the talent competition with it. And so people were really angry when I won. Again, it was the same type of a realm. People weren't really comfortable with the fact that I came in kind of saying I didn't want to be in a swimsuit, and I came in and did this whole science thing. Like, I was too different for a lot of people. But I didn't really care, because I was like, you know what, at the end of the day, if I walk away from this in last place, I feel like I went and I did exactly what I wanted to do, and I was exactly who I am as a person. I didn't try to just do what everybody else did just because they did. Because I tried that when I was in high school, right? I tried to do all the things that everybody said that they wanted me to do. That didn't work out so well for me. Well, this time it worked out. So not only did I win that talent award, I won Miss America, and I had the opportunity to perform that demonstration live on NBC in front of multiple millions of viewers, and I ultimately won the job of Miss America 2020. which is kind of incredible. And I think that in those moments and in this moment, I'm like, what did I get myself into? Because I then had to take 2 years off of my education. I took a year off to be Miss Virginia, and I took a second year off to be Miss America. So I stepped away from my academic life to then pursue this seemingly non-academic life, but what turned into an opportunity for me to further my career in a very unique way. So we're gonna hit to the next one. And I like to say that literally being Miss America supplemented my STEM career goals in more ways than one. I joke that it's like a paid internship. I got to take these years off to work on really important things to my own life. I do the STEM education, right? I love science. I'm not here to tell students to love science as much as I do, but I want to show them how exciting science can be. And if they're a little girl in a room, that they can see an adult woman who potentially has a crown on her head in a science profession, and that that's normal for them. I also do a ton with drug safety and abuse prevention. I talk about the opioid epidemic. I talk about Narcan. I destigmatize people that are going through substance use disorders. I talk about these issues, which are sometimes really uncomfortable for people. But as a pharmacy student, I was seeing a need for medication safety and abuse prevention. And let's flip to the next slide. I got to stand on stage, literally on NBC, and talk about what I wanted to do. And I said that I wanted to work with broadcast partners, right? To be able to do public service announcements. Well, after I won, the DEA called Miss America. And for the last 2 years, I've been a spokesperson for the DEA with their National Drug Take-Back Days. And so you might have heard me on the radio or seen me on TV recently, because for the last probably month and a half, I've been getting text messages saying that, oh, I heard you on the radio talking about drug take-back with the DEA. Those are opportunities that are going to further my career as a pharmacist, but I got through standing on stage and talking about them at Miss America. And hit to the next one. You can just click through this whole slide for me if you don't mind. This is kind of what I do with my social impact initiative. And I talked about that started in the 90s, and we each have this societal work that we do. And mine is this, which I like to say is called Mind Your Meds. But I do half with medication safety with parents and kids, and another half with providing information about prescription drugs, preventing drug abuse, and then going a little bit into particularly more the opioid epidemic, because that's where illicit and prescription drugs tend to kind of have a transcendence there. They kind of go together. But it's interesting, the last time I was here at the Virginia Tech Southwest Center, I heard one of those like horror stories from a kid that I had met who said that when they were a little kid, they had taken all of their grandfather's blood pressure pills thinking that they were Tic Tacs, and they ended up in the hospital. So those are some of the things that I talk about with parents. Safe storage of medications. If you have little kids in your house, whether or not you're a parent, you're an adult, you're a grandparent, lock your medications up, put them away, because you don't know when someone's going to come in your home and think your blood pressure pills are Tic Tacs. And that's a story that happens all the time. I've worked with poison control centers. I've worked with the CDC, a wonderful opportunity for me to then be able to use this very unique opportunity to further my career. We can head to the next one. But my favorite job is being the science princess. So I'm kind of like the Disney princess of science for the little girls. They don't know what Miss America is, and they don't necessarily care. They care that I come with a crown on my head and I do science with them. And I have little girls that come up to me and they wear lab coats and crowns to meet me. And that's probably like the most meaningful thing that I could have ever had happen, was when I was the little girl and I felt like I was different from all of my friends, and I didn't have anybody that I could look to and say, oh, I can grow up and be just like her. That now I get to be that person for a little girl who maybe feels like they're different from their friends, and that they love science and they want to pursue this. And maybe I can talk to them about, I didn't always do so great in my classes. I had classes I had to retake. I struggled in my chemistry courses, but I was able to make it through and be a successful STEM professional despite that. The best job. This was pre-COVID, given the no masks, but I wish I could go back and do this again. So my key takeaways on this for everyone, and this is independent of your age, your background, where you are in life, be creative, flexible, and adaptable in literally everything that you do. It's been one of the most important skills that I've learned through this process. Don't be afraid to approach your problems with crazy strategies. Everyone thought I was insane when I did a science demonstration the first time, but would you look at that? It helped me get to the goal that I was looking to get to. One of the biggest things for me, I'm really rigid. And so I'm not usually someone that like sees a Facebook ad and I'm like, let's go. But I, for some reason, decided to seize the opportunity of competing for Miss Virginia. It was my last year of eligibility in terms of my age. And I was like, I'm not going to lose anything by doing this. I'm just going to try it. And so I tried that opportunity, and ultimately it led me down an incredible path that I would have never expected to have been on in my life, and that will be part of my life forever. Don't be complacent. Don't just do what everybody else is doing just because everybody else is. That's one of the worst things that we can do in life. And I feel like oftentimes we get so tired or kind of stuck in the cycle of just getting through your day, and you just get through it. But are you actively choosing what you're doing every day? I want you to think about that and make sure that you're actively choosing exactly who you are and what you want to be doing. And of course, find your talents and passions and embrace them. And that can happen at any point in your life, whether or not you're a young person like I am, or if you're then rediscovering talents or passions through your life. It's okay to act on those, no matter when it is in your lifetime. That's an important thing that we can do. And finally, that little girl that we saw at the beginning turned into this girl. We're going to click that one more time. I turned into that girl. And it's incredible to think of the fact that, you know, the other women who maybe competed for Miss America, I think of like Miss Florida. She was a great friend of mine. She had danced since she was 4 or 5. She had loved dance her entire life. And she danced on the Miss America stage. I was the little girl that loved science. And I had my beakers and my flasks. And I did science on the Miss America stage. And I became the Science Miss America. I remember the first time I did a real big event. I went to the Rose Parade in California right after I won. And I was the first Miss America in the Rose Parade. I was so excited. And people would call out from the crowd, like, go science. Like, are you the science girl? People would see my crown and associate the crown with science. And I was completely blown away by that. And I felt like that validated the entire process for me, because I thought that the reason I couldn't compete for Miss America was because I didn't sing or dance. I didn't play an instrument. I didn't twirl a baton. I didn't do the things that everybody else did. And that was so consistent throughout my entire life. I was never like all of my other friends. I often felt like I was alone. But once I finally thought about who I was and did exactly what I wanted to do and embraced the fact that I was different, I got to be known for that. And I got to be the Science Miss America, and I got to carve my own path. And now I'm Miss America during a pandemic when science has never been more important than before. And so I get the opportunity to show everyone how Miss America has really adapted throughout time, how Miss America has changed my life, and to show everyone that science really is all around us every single day. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. We do have a little bit of time. If anybody has any questions for me, I'd love to answer any of the questions that you have. It can be about my time at Virginia Tech as a student, Miss America, during a pandemic. You can ask me anything, just don't ask me who I voted for. That's the only question I won't answer. Anything? Oh, you always remind me of that. So I actually won almost $80,000 of scholarship money winning Miss America. I won about 30 winning Miss Virginia, and then another 50 winning Miss America. And so I have almost $80,000 under my belt to then pay for the next 2 years of my pharmacy school, because technically I'm an out-of-state student still. And so VCU takes my out-of-state money. And I will then continue my PHARMD. I have 3 more years left. I will graduate in 2024 with my PHARMD, sit for my boards, and then never work at a pharmacy, because again, I never do anything the normal way. I'd like to work in a pharmaceutical company. And so I had worked in that pharmaceutical company as an intern in college. And I'd like to go and work kind of in business development and, you know, combine science and business. Talked about my parents being small business owners. So I was always interested in, you know, the way that science and products and business could kind of go together. And I think I would probably enjoy that more than sitting in a pharmacy, although I love the pharmacology and understanding the medicines, and pharmacists are medication experts. And that's why I decided to go to school to do that. And so again, I never do anything the normal way. But I'm really grateful to then be back in Richmond. So I start in August again after 2 years off. And I'm currently working with my professors to make sure that I don't come in and completely fall flat on my face. I have to get myself reintegrated. but VCU and Virginia Tech have both been more than wonderful in helping support me through this. And they've been thrilled because I've talked about Virginia Tech and VCU wherever I go. And so sometimes I go out with my crown on and people say, go Hokies. And I'm like, I'm so excited, let's go. But it's been a great opportunity. So any questions, I'll be here. Oh, you do have a question. Yes. Yes. You know, it's hard in the very beginning. They kind of asked me like what I needed. And the biggest thing that I needed is rest and water and like snacks. There's not much I can do to treat the chronic disease that I have. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a genetic connective tissue disorder. And I have chronic pain, chronic fatigue. Sometimes I'm kind of feel like brain fog when I get up and I just kind of can't cognitively get myself to a place that I need to be. It's just part of the disease I have. The biggest thing that I will tell you is there's not really anything they could do, but the universe fixed it for me because they made COVID happen. So typically Miss America travels 20,000 miles a month, typically changes cities every 24 to 48 hours, is on a plane every other day, and never comes home. Like never. Like your parents ship you clothes and you ship clothes home. And I'm like, how do I do laundry? You don't. The answer is you don't. So that would have been really hard for me to sustain as a person with a chronic illness. And instead of having to solve that problem, the universe just said COVID. And so I will say that like through this entire process, if you're a person of faith, like being in the right place at the right time and that like God has led you to like the certain place in life and that you're placed here for a certain reason in a certain time, never felt more true for me than this year. Like, why did I, Camille, win Miss America this year? And why, for the Miss America organization, was I the person that came in here? Because I wasn't even, a lot of girls would have been really disappointed that they couldn't do the certain job that Miss America always got to do. I was sitting there like, this is great. I could work from my computer and then take a nap. Like, that was thrilling for me. So I didn't even really have to deal with it so much because of COVID. And so I feel kind of grateful that that happened to me this year. Thank you for your question. Anybody else? Oop, one in the back. What things of nature do I have in my life now? Other than like my zoo of plants that I have, I also have a zoo of animals. I have 2 cats and a COVID puppy. My cats are Cappuccino and Latte, and they're 12-year-old tabby cats. So I've had them since I was in 9th grade, and now they live in my apartment in Richmond with me. And one of them takes 4 medicines a day because she's in congestive heart failure. And so I've never been more grateful for pharmaceuticals. And I have a 11-month-old now pit bull lab puppy named Roxy. Oh, this is a good story. Hold on. I got her because she's my lab assistant. She's my science lab. And her name is Roxy, R-O-X-I, because the demonstration I did was the catalytic decomposition of hydrogen peroxide. So when I got her, my mom's like, she's your science lab. You have to name her something science. You should name her Beaker. And I'm like, that's too obvious. So she's Roxy, named after my experience with the hydrogen peroxide. And she's fully my emotional support animal through this process. So thank you guys for listening. I'll be around a little bit after. I have like autograph cards and stuff if anybody would like something to take home with them. Thank you for your attention and for allowing me to share my story with you today.